60973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, police searching for an escaped terror suspect says the fact there have been no confirmed sightings is testament to his ingenuity. 21-year-old Daniel Cleef had been a former soldier with the British Army before being charged. Crime editor for the Daily Telegraph, Martin Evans, says it's worrying this can happen when you consider vehicles go in and out of prisons every day.
Sort of searches that take place going in and, more importantly, going out be fairly straightforward. To have a look under a vehicle using mirrors on rollers is the usual thing. So either the searches haven't been done properly, or ingenuity of this escape is such that he's managed to avoid detection.
Police will investigate the deaths of a number of babies at 2 hospitals in Nottingham. Officers say the decision was made following discussions with midwife Donna Ockenden, who's already carrying out a review. 5 former Met police officers have admitted sending racist messages to each other over WhatsApp. They contained offensive comments about the Duchess of Sussex and the Prime Minister. And British scientists are welcoming a deal which takes the UK back into the European Union's Horizon Science Research Programme. A dispute over Brexit trading rules meant Britain wasn't part of the group of universities, companies and institutes for 2 years. LBC Markets report the FTSE 100's closed up 15 points at 74.41. The pound buys $1.24 and €1.16. LBC weather, those showers clearing to leave a dry evening, lows of 13. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Serena Farrow.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Well, as you know, on a Thursday, we like to talk to one person for the whole hour. Bit of me, then a bit of you. So if you'd like to phone in to talk to our guest tonight, it's 0345 6060 973. Well, I should tell you who our guest is. It's Dawn Butler. She's the Labour MP for Brent Central, and she's written a book called A Purposeful Life, What I've Learned About Breaking Barriers, not making barriers. That would be a bit of an odd book, wouldn't it? And inspiring change. Dawn, welcome. In the talk up there, I described you as a role model. Do you see, I mean, people always get slightly nervous when people describe them as role models, but do you see that you are one for many young, particularly young black women?
It's taken me a while to kind of accept that, but I do now, because I understand it's a compliment, and I know it comes kind of with responsibility as well. And yeah, I just accept it, and I'm grateful that people feel that I'm a role model. And I do try to literally live a purposeful life. Is what I do sort of every single day.
It is when I saw that you had this book coming out, and I looked at the title and I thought, that's a slightly strange title. Why did you call it A Purposeful Life? What did you mean by it?
Well, the title came about because I was walking really sort of fast with purpose to catch a train. And I called like the publishers. I'm like, we need to call it Walking with Purpose. And I was like, this is the title. I found it. I've got it. This is it. And they were like, oh, we'll work on it. And that's how it came about.
And I think everybody thinks they lead a purposeful life, don't they?
Do they? I don't know. I think everybody, to live a purposeful life, and it's what I talk about in the book, we have to be constantly vigilant. So if you're going to be an ally, for instance, it's not like you can just be an ally once, or you tackle some form of discrimination once in the workplace, but you don't tackle that discrimination in your family or, in the corner shop. So it's a purposeful thing, and it's a constant thing. It's something you always have to do. And it's not an easy thing. There's this government's sort of fake culture war on woke is all about trying to stop people caring for others, trying to stop people stopping discrimination, whether it be to the black community, the LGBTQI plus community, to women. That is what woke is. And I just think we need to be more purposeful in ensuring that we have a better society.
Why aren't you on Labour's front bench? Because you are one of Labour's most recognisable MPs. You were a minister in the Brown government, weren't you? You were out of Parliament for 5 years when you lost your seat. Came back in 2015. You were a leading light in Jeremy Corbyn's regime, but Keir Starmer hasn't. Well, maybe he has asked you, and you've said no. I don't know.
Take a sip of water before I answer that. No, I mean, I'm okay not being in the shadow cabinet at the moment. Of course, I'd love to serve again and serve in a Labour government. I'm doing a lot of things at the moment, and I want to see a Labour government. So we're all working towards that. But you'd have to ask Keir why I'm not in his shadow cabinet.
We see you're the second female Labour MP that said that to me in the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I look at people like Stella Creasy and think, well, you are one of Labour's most recognisable faces. You're a brilliant campaigner. You're brilliant on the media. And you're not on the front bench. It seems ludicrous when you want to be a government in waiting, and yet you've got quite a few of your stronger characters. Maybe it's character. That maybe they don't want strong characters. They will just want people who are going to toe the line.
Well, I think...
Because you've never really done that, have you?
Well... That's not my purpose. But the thing is this, you're right. I'm one of the few MPs who've got ministerial experience. I came in under Tony Blair. I served under Gordon Brown, very active in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. So, I mean, I am always ready to serve. So I think that's the main takeaway. But ultimately, we also all have different roles. So... my job, I see at the moment, is to push the Labour Party to make sure that we have the policies that are going to give people in the country hope. I mean, I was on Sky the other day and they had some polling done and there was 64% of people that are in the don't know categories. So it's easier to move people from the don't knows to Labour than it is to move people from Tory to Labour. But we're not going to move those people from don't know to Labour unless we give them something to vote for. So it's all there to play for.
Do you think, though, that, I mean, there is this 15 to 20 point lead that Labour have got at the moment? I sort of think on that's much more of an anti-Tory vote than a pro-Labour vote, that people are fed up with the incompetence of a Conservative government, so they say, well, I'll vote for the other lot then, the other lot being Labour. It's not, well, Keir Starmer's really inspired me to vote Labour. Do you think that lead, although it's quite substantial, is quite fragile?
I think you can never take any lead for granted. That's number one. The lead will always shorten as you get closer to an election. But actually, I think this government may buck that trend because they are so bad. And I think it is manifesting itself in regards to school ceilings falling in with RAC, regards to prisoners escaping, all of the strikes that we're seeing. All of that is because of the mismanagement of this government and the failure to invest in our infrastructure that keeps us going. So I think they'll probably buck that trend. But I do take on board and agree that people want to vote for something, not just against something. So that's why we have to move the don't knows into Labour. So we have to give them something to vote for.
What issues do you think are the ones that are really going to swing it for Labour? Because I was talking to Jeremy Corbyn on the programme the other day, and I thought his problem, but particularly before the 2019 election, maybe less so 2017, was that he came across as Mr. Misery Guts. Basically, as a leader of the opposition has to, pointing out all of the bad things the government was doing and how terrible life was for some people. But you never got the sense that he's sort of this sort of sunny uplands out there that he could lead people towards.
Don't you think the manifesto was quite uplifting?
No. I mean,
really?
the 2017 one, I think you could argue was quite innovative, that some of the policies individually were quite popular, but put together it didn't quite add up. And the 2019 one was, well, let's just give everyone a little present, shall we? And as every day of the election campaign went on, they came up with some other gimmick, sort of free broadband for everyone, and people just didn't.
Although that would have come in handy over COVID.
Well,
and the government's
maybe,
now talking about free broadband for everyone. Otherwise, how do you get businesses working in rural areas? But I
you
take
see
your
what I mean.
point.
There has to be that sense of optimism, and I think that's a challenge, also a challenge for Labour now.
Yeah, I mean, I called the 2019 manifesto the Toby Carvery of manifestos. It was just it was just so much. It was so much stuff. You're like, okay, stop now. So it did go a bit overboard, but the policies were still very important and essential to how we run our country. So if you look at what people are talking about now, like bringing water back into public ownership, that's actually very popular amongst the population. So on all of that, it's really...
But it is until you tell the population that it would cost tens of billions of pounds to do, and they would have to pay for it.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the money that the water companies are making, they're not reinvesting in cleaner water or sanitation.
But that's because of terrible regulation, isn't it?
You can blame that and the government for that as well, because the government hasn't been doing their duty, even though we've pulled them up on that many times, and even recently they're still failing to hold water companies to account. But there is enough money in the system because if you think about it, if the shareholders can get a whole load of money, whether it be for water, energy, railways, if the shareholders can get a whole load of money, that money could be reinvested back into the service.
Well, it could, but if I come back to the point that if you superficially you can say to people, well, privatisation of water clearly hasn't worked, so therefore we've got to renationalise it. That there's a certain logic to that argument until you then go into the detail and say to people, well, instead of spending £15 billion extra on the health service, we're actually going to spend that buying the water industry back. You think that's a good idea? Most people say, maybe not.
Well, it does depend on what you prioritise, right? There is money in government systems. There's money there. It depends on what's prioritised. If you think about it, think about the education department being, how much do they spend on it? £34 million? There's money there when they want to find money. It's what you do with it. So what is the priority of a government? And I think the priority of the government should be to prioritise our infrastructure, our social infrastructure.
But people could then say, well, that's fine. Obviously, infrastructure has to be a priority, but so does improving the health service, so does improving the education system, so does paying the police more.
That's all part of the infrastructure. So,
well, it is, but everyone's going to have their own set of priorities, aren't they? And Rachel Reeves, we had her on yesterday. She, as the Chancellor in the future Labour government, is going to have to learn to say the word no quite often, I suspect.
Yeah, but it's what you say no to. There's some things that you can say not now, maybe later. But the thing is, are you considering it? So the fact that this government, in 2010 decided not to move forward with building schools for the future programme, look what's happened now, 13 years later. So not having an investment in the future is problematic. The same with green energy. It's all very problematic.
Pauline has texted in to say, I want to thank Dawn for speaking the truth about the liar in Parliament. Just take us through what happened there. This is when you called Boris Johnson a liar.
Absolutely. So it's all in the book. So it's quite interesting because when you're writing a book as well, you journey back through your life and you think, okay, that's why I do things I do. And the word liar is quite triggering for me because, when I was young, when I was like 8 years old and I was at school, when the teacher called me a liar when I said that cockroaches flew, and she was like, no, they don't. I was like, yes, they do. I saw it. And so it's quite a loaded word for me. So having watched, and this is the problem, you've interviewed so many politicians, we can't have a democracy where a politician can just lie constantly. This is the Trump playbook, right, where you amplify fake news. And we saw just this week the Tory leaflet that went out in one of their constituencies where they're saying, just say anything at the time. Better to say the wrong thing at the right time and get away with it. By the time you go in to correct the lie, it's too late. That's really problematic for our democracy. So that happens all the time. It happens on the doorsteps. It happens in radio studios like this, for it to happen in Parliament at the dispatch box, that's supposed to be sacrosanct. That's supposed to be the place where ministers and MPs come in and they tell the truth to parliamentarians, because we're all elected, and therefore to society. Boris just kept coming in and lying and lying and lying. And I did as much as I could to try and hold him to account. I raised points of orders, I tabled questions, I did everything I possibly could. And in the end, I felt I had no choice but to stand up in Parliament and call him a liar.
Had you thought about it? I mean, was it a spontaneous thing where you thought, well, I'm going to do it now? Or was it something that you'd planned to do?
It was part planned. I told my office in the morning, I was like, I sort of wrote a speech, because it was like the end of term sort of thing. I wrote a speech and I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to call him a liar. And they're like, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'll do it in a way that I can. But then as I sort of, and what happens is when you're in Parliament, like you kind of prepare a 10-minute speech, and then the speaker says, oh, you've got 3 minutes to do a speech. You think, I've got 10 minutes worth of speech in my head. And then in the end, I just had to get cut straight to the chase and just call him a liar. And then the more the deputy speaker kept telling me to withdraw, the stronger I got. I was like, no, I am not taking it back. He is a liar. And then I was kicked out, booted out. But did you know, I didn't just have to leave the chamber. I had to leave Parliament. I had to leave the actual estate. I didn't know I had to do that.
Don't they dock your day's pay as well?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I didn't mind that. I would take the punishment of that. But
would you do it again?
I almost feel I have to do it again. I mean, Rishi lied on Wednesday. He stood up in Parliament and said that Keir hadn't mentioned crumbling schools and RAC in any of his speeches, and he had. And it's like, you can't just keep, because the problem is we've got a huge problem with our democracy. Even ministers are coming in and they're constantly lying, and the person who's the arbiter of what happens is the Prime Minister. And if the Prime Minister's not going to hold any of the ministers to account, we've just got a government that's, well, it is a zombie government, as Nadine said, but it is a government that lies a lot.
Because it is one of those words that is being considered the sort of ultimate unparliamentary word to say, to accuse an honourable member of lying. I mean, that's as bad as it gets in Parliament. And I used to, on this programme, I remember Emily Thornberry once sat in that chair where you're sitting now and kept calling Boris Johnson a liar. This was way back in, 2018, 2019 time. And I kept saying, no, you really can't do this. This is really sort of ruining public discourse when you have politicians calling each other liars. But it then got to the point where I just didn't bother anymore, because it was quite obvious to everyone what was going on.
Yeah. But it's ridiculous,
It's a
isn't it?
terrible situation that we've got to in our public discourse, though, isn't it?
It is, but it's also ridiculous that you get punished for calling out the liar, but the liar gets away scot-free.
He didn't, though, in the end, did he?
No, it took 2 years. And then he resigned. And the irony was, and I had to edit my book, and it was lucky because, the irony was he would have been booted out of Parliament for lying. So, but you're right, of course it would be better if we didn't have that kind of situation where we had to keep quiet. But unfortunately, politics has changed a lot. And I think Trump played a huge role in that as well, and Boris. And I think the thing about Boris is he has highlighted clearly all the things that are wrong with our democracy, all the things that you can get away with if you're a bit of a charlatan.
Well, we'll hear much more from Dawn in just a minute. I just want to address a text here that's come from Brendan, who says, why has there been so many Labour MPs on LBC this week? It almost feels like the station is choosing a side. I know that's a bit of a harsh accusation, but why the sudden surge in Labour Party guests? Correct me, please. Well, we had Rachel Reeves on for an hour yesterday. We have her on to do a phone-in every month. She's a Shadow Chancellor. She could be the Chancellor in a few months' time. Why wouldn't we want to do that? Wes Streeting does a similar phone-in with Sheila every month. I think that was today. We did have the chairman of the Conservative Party on Cross Question yesterday. But I can tell you, we try and get And Bridget Phillipson was on today with Tom Swarbrick as well. So, and now you. So I can see why people might get that impression, but I can assure you, we try and get government ministers to come on and do these phone-ins where callers phone in and hold them to account. But I can't remember. I mean, Chris is shaking his head at me. Neither of us can remember the last time a government minister came on this programme and did that. I wonder why that would be.
Well, the thing is, they don't feel they need to. When you see them in Parliament, they are just treading water, right? And they really don't care very much. So Rishi doesn't want to come in on a Wednesday and do PMQs. It's written all over his face.
To be fair, he did do a phone-in with Nick Ferrari a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, he has done it. But, I mean, we issue invitations all the time. But frankly, when you keep issuing invitations and they kind of think, yeah, I'm sure we can arrange something, and then nothing happens, eventually you think, well, what's the point? They just keep saying no. But don't get me on my hobby horse. It's 8:20.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
See, somebody here says Rishi lied yesterday when he said he was delivering for the country. I don't know whether that's a sort of slightly sarcastic remark or not, but that isn't a lie because he thinks he is delivering for the country. Now, I'm sure, Dawn, you can come up with lots of reasons why he isn't delivering for the country. But that's not a lie, is it?
Well, he's delivering for very few people. I'd like to really sort of sit him down and say, who do you really think you're delivering for the country, and how, and where? So in what area is he delivering for the country? It's not in education. It's not in policing. It's not in government. Where is he delivering for the country?
See, at least when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, he could legitimately say, well, I'm delivering on Ukraine, because I think he genuinely did do a good job on that. And this is where I think a lot of people couldn't see the wood for the trees with Boris, in that one day I could speak on this programme and praise him to the skies for what he was doing on Ukraine, and then the next day call him all the names under the sun for Partygate. And people couldn't quite get that, because I think a lot of people think it's black and white. You have to be on one side or the other. You can't look at things with any degree of nuance, and I think that's a real weakness in our public discourse at the moment, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, we are all flawed individuals. You know, nobody.
Speak for yourself.
Nobody's like perfect, but and like Boris will always say hello. If you're walking past him in the corridor, he'll say hello, and he's somebody you have a good laugh with. I mean, you wouldn't leave your cat with him or anything like that, but you know, you'd have a laugh with him. But yeah, there was a broken clock is right at least twice a day. So the problem is with Boris was that he was destroying our democracy, and that deeply troubled me. Deeply.
Let's talk about your experience in Parliament personally, because you've catalogued one or two incidents where, one or two of the things that I've read, I just can't believe that they happen in this day and age. But in 2023, how different is Parliament for a black female MP compared to when you were first elected in 2005?
I think, comically, one of the differences, there are more of us. So there are more people to get confused with. So Belle and I laugh all the time because people are constantly, confusing us.
This is Belle Ribera, your colleague.
Yeah, MP for Streatham. And it's
frankly, you look nothing like each other.
I know, but it's
apart from the obvious.
It's just absolutely crazy, and they're always getting our names wrong, and that's quite offensive, really, because people deserve to get the credit for the work that they're doing. I don't want my name to be under Marsha's name or Belle's name. I want them to get the credit for what they're doing. So how is it different? There's still problems. We're still asked disproportionately to show our passes than our white counterparts. We're still treated differently on some occasions. I had one MP last year who came to me in tears because of an incident that happened. But I suppose
Don't say you've become a mother figure already.
Well, I embrace it now. I'm a veteran. I've been told I'm a veteran. And that's okay, because I feel that my job is to make sure that I smooth the pathway for MPs coming forward behind me, because I don't want them to go through what I went through. I don't want them to be mistaken for the cleaner, even though there's nothing wrong with being a cleaner. I don't want them to be stopped as they're going for lunch on the terrace and told, this isn't for you. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be there. At the end of the day, we all earn our place to be there. We are elected. Every single MP's elected. And there should be due respect paid to that.
So has it been predominantly sort of House of Commons staff or other politicians that have tried to put these barriers in your way or misrecognised you?
It's often MPs. Sometimes it's the BBC, that's always getting us wrong. And you're just thinking, come on now. We've been around for a while. So it's different at different times, I suppose. And sometimes, we're asked to show our passes by police officers. There's one, so this happened yesterday, actually. I won't say which MP it was, but she said that there's a specific police officer that's always asking her for her pass. And she said to him yesterday, you must know who I am, because you're always asking me for my pass. So you must know who I am. And I said, he's just exerting his power over you. And that's the problem that we have sometimes.
That's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because, you've talked a lot about policing, particularly in the capital, but more widely too. And it's become, I think, one of the big issues of the last 2 years. Not just since the murder of Sarah Everard, but on many other things too. And you represent a central London seat, and the reputation of the Metropolitan Police has never been worse. And you've got enough experiences to understand why that is.
I think the difference now, Ian, is that they're being exposed. And it was difficult to expose them before. So I talk about, in my book, when I was 18 years old and the experience of the police and how the police arrested my brother and could have killed my brother. That was when I was 18 years old. I didn't have a camera phone then. They weren't invented. But the fact is now we can expose the police, and now we've got more whistleblowers. And so this is why it's all like coming to the fore. And it is a real worry. And obviously I'm in a different position now, and I've got access to the police and the police service and trying to force change through. But I don't know. And I was talking about this yesterday. And I don't know. I think the police is especially the Met Police is too big. I think it needs to be broken up. And I think that what needs to happen in the police is too big for one person to invoke that change, and it's too big for a former police officer to make the changes that need to happen.
Well, it's a massive issue, and it's something that you might want to ask Dawn a little bit more about over the next half an hour. We're going to take your calls to Dawn Butler in just a few moments' time. The number to call 0345 6060 973. I should also say that, Dawn, you did a really good interview with James O'Brien on his Full Disclosure podcast. I deliberately haven't gone over a lot of the ground that he covered with you, so if you want to hear a lot more of Dawn Butler, you can do so by downloading James O'Brien's Full Disclosure podcast. It was a couple of weeks ago, I think, wasn't it? So it's right up the top of the schedule. It's 8:30 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines from Serena Farrow.
The Met Police has confirmed a terror suspect at HMP Wandsworth escaped by strapping himself to the underside of a van. Officers stopped the vehicle around an hour after it left the prison, but Daniel Khalif had already disappeared. 5 former Met Police officers have admitted sending racist comments to each other over WhatsApp. The men, who'd all retired before sending the messages, made offensive remarks about the Duchess of Sussex and the Prime Minister. And British scientists are welcoming a deal which takes the UK back into the European Union's Horizon Science Research Programme. A dispute over Brexit trading rules meant Britain wasn't part of the group of universities, companies and institutes for 2 years. LBC weather. Going to be pretty dry tonight after those showers clear away, particularly in the northeast. Some mist and fog around in the far east and southwest, with lows of 13 degrees.
This is LBC. Iain Dale on LBC.
Dawn Butler, MP for Brent Central, is with us, and she's going to be taking your calls from now. 0345 6060 973. Jane's in Golders Green. Hi, Jane.
Oh, hi. Hi. I'm very perturbed by the way that MPs are gagged when they're in the cabinet. They can't say what they really think, especially if it's against their own government. Now, I want to ask Dawn, would she rather stay as she is and be able to voice up what she thinks, or would a cabinet post be tempting?
When she'd
Even though
have to be
there's a
gagged.
Yeah?
I mean, that's the ultimate question, I think, for any politician, isn't it? Because, I mean, in a way, it's unanswerable, because nobody wants to lose their freedom to say what they think. But everyone knows if you're in the cabinet, there is such a thing as collective responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, it's important that you have collective responsibility. It's important that you're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, as they say. But it's always good to be in government, and it's always good to be in cabinet where you can make decisions, life-changing decisions, where you can invest, where you can put forward your ideas and your vision. So I would opt to be in cabinet, but I also wouldn't be silenced. So I've never been silenced. I've always spoken my mind. When I was, in cabinet, when I had a ministerial position with Gordon Brown, I mean, I did amazing things for young people. And, some people's like, why are you so interested in young people? They don't vote. And I'm like, if you're not interested in young people, they won't be interested in you. And then look what happened. Now everybody's caught in the youth vote. So I think you do need to be a strong character, though, because our parliamentary system is quite... it's not very mature in some ways. Like, they don't necessarily put the best people in the best roles. They put people in roles where they're grateful, and so they will be compliant and obedient, rather than, oh, you're a former teacher, let's put you in education.
What would be your best role?
I walked into that, didn't I?
Yeah, you
my
did.
my best role. I mean, I'd love to be Minister for London. And
That's not in the cabinet.
And I'd love to do DCMS, because that's quite
Get free tickets for
quite a
concerts.
varied role, and I love music. There's a what you call it, a playlist at the back of my book. So I love music. Yeah.
I haven't got that far.
Have you not
yet.
got that far?
I'm going to have a look at that.
Oh, have a look
But I
at
want to
the
go back to
playlist.
Jane, because Jane, you must you're obviously interested in politics. You get that cabinet ministers do have to toe a line, don't they? They have to, if they can't agree with their own government, they have to resign.
Well, it's all very well, but when they say serve, like Dawn has several times, and you have, I think, serving who? Serving your fellow cabinet people, really. It seems to me that the rank and file out there are forgotten. They're not served in the end.
Well, in the end, if you're a politician, whether you're on the backbenches or not, you're supposed to be serving the people, whether it's your own constituents or whether it's the people of the country.
Supposed to be.
I mean, I understand how you feel. I do think this government has lost focus on what their primary responsibility is, and that is to serve the people, and also to protect its citizens. And I think, this government has lost focus of that. So I agree that that's how it feels. I think that's why we need a change, to be honest.
Well, I think really governments ought to have a stop, like, 2 terms and you're out, because I think it's really when they go over a bit that they start taking everything for granted. And
we did have fixed-term parliaments once. We did have fixed-term parliaments once, where it was every 5 years, but then that got changed after the coalition broke down.
Okay, Jane, thank you very much. I'm just looking through your playlist now.
Oh, yeah, do you like it?
Most of them I've never heard of.
Oh, really?
But the one that I totally agree with you, This Is Me, from The Greatest Showman.
Oh, The Greatest Showman. I mean, that is such a powerful song.
Next time you see Brandon Lewis in the House of Commons, walk up behind him and start singing it, because he is the biggest addict of The Greatest Showman you've ever come across.
Really?
So you can do
I
a
wonder
duet.
I wonder if he's seen it more times than me. I went to the theatre to see it as well. It was not the theatre performance, but it's a sing along. Yeah, I did that, dressed up and everything.
I think he could compete with you on that one. Sarah is in Wimborne in Dorset. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Hi.
Ian.
What would you like to say?
Hi, Dawn.
Hi.
I'm just about a member of the Labour Party, and at times I'm feeling that Keir isn't listening to its members anymore. How do you feel about that? Do you think that certain things like privatisation that he's deprivatising things, I'm not saying it in the right way, but he seems to have gone more, I don't know, just not listening, I feel. How do you feel about that?
Hi, Sarah. Well, I'm glad that you're still a member. Please continue to be a member.
Clinging on.
we need to ensure that we keep our members, because we are a membership party. We're nothing without our members. I hear what you're saying, and I am very much an advocate for, I call it not-for-profit, running things as not-for-profit rather than renationalisation. I think there's a sort of a slight difference in how we talk about it. And I know that Keir hasn't spoken very much along those lines recently. And I think he would argue that what he was doing was trying to, first of all, get a platform where people will listen to him, and so that people will look at the Labour Party as being electable again. And I think the polling that was out, as I said, just recently, that shows that 64% of people are undecided, I actually think that's good for us. So I think as now people are fed up with the Tory party, what we can do now is start talking a little bit more about policies, values and hope, and what the country will look like under a Labour government, and start moving those people over. So hang on in there, because I feel that, the change is coming.
I can imagine, Sarah, Wimborne. I've been to Wimborne. I spoke at the Literary Festival there a couple of years ago. I imagine it's quite a conservative place. Do you feel like you're the only Labour person in the village?
Well, yes. It does feel a bit isolating, and sometimes I think, well, do I still want to be here? But yeah. I like living in the area, and yeah, let's hope change does come, though.
Yeah,
people realise.
OK, Sarah, thank you very much. Let's go to David in Enfield. David, hello.
Good evening. Good evening, Dawn. Hope you're well.
Hi.
Dawn, I had a question about pensioners. There's now over 12.5 million people collecting a state pension. And as you're obviously aware, the older age groups are growing in size. There's 3.4 million people now aged 18 over in the United Kingdom. Quite a lot of those are older ladies on pension credit. There's 1.5 million on pension credit, living on £203 a week. So without council support for their accommodation costs, they'd be living in abject poverty. So my question is, historically, the pensioners have been seen to be a group favouring the Conservative Party. Yet, in my opinion, because I am helping an old age pensioner at the moment, they're the ones who are particularly impacted by this huge rise in the cost of living, because they're obviously at home all day. They must keep warm. They have medical needs. So, would the Labour Party, if you considered establishing a minister for pensioners in your government, I would even consider voting for you, because
there is one already.
A minister for pensioners.
Well, minister for pensions.
No, not pensions, pensioners, to look after pensioners' affairs.
Hi, David. I'm not the person that's going to be making all of these decisions, but I think that.
Let's imagine if you were.
But if I were, I think it is obviously important that, and I kind of disagree. I think pensioners used to predominantly vote Tories in the main. I don't think that's quite the case now. I think there's been a move away from that. But obviously there needs to be a consideration around people, pensioners who've given to our country. I think to be honest, the Tories kind of try to always appeal to pensioners
because they vote
in their policies. Yeah, because they are the voters, and that's why they said to me, "Why am I focusing on young people?" But I think we judge a country by how they treat the vulnerable, and that includes the pensioners.
Because the problem is, we had a discussion last night about Nick Fletcher, MP, who thinks there should be a Minister for Men, which I instinctively recoiled against, thought, don't be so ridiculous. But the more the discussion went on, I thought, well, actually, there is a point to this. It's not as stupid idea as I thought it was. But the problem is, if you go down that road, you can have minister for this, minister for that, minister for the other, and by the time you've got like 200 ministers, and I think you can only have a maximum of 95, can't you? Something like that.
Oh, I don't even know if it's that many, but yeah, there is a limit to how many ministers you can have.
David, thank you very much. You haven't convinced Dawn on that one, but we'll see what else we can convince her of over the next 15 minutes. Robbie sent a lovely text in saying, I have to say that this hour has been genuinely interesting and incredibly decent, considering you are two people with fairly divergent political views. The way in which you've held the discussion gives me real hope for the political discourse in the UK. This is why I listen to LBC. Keep it up.
Oh,
that's nice, isn't it?
That's
We
nice.
can go to the break with some warmth flowing through our veins. It's 8:45.
Alexa, play LBC.
One of the worst parts of our job is definitely having to tell a victim of serious crime that we can't do anything.
Your voices.
I just cannot believe that things like this are happening.
You're the Deputy Mayor of London for Transport on the day ULEZ extended and you don't know the cost.
Leading Britain's conversation.
Halve inflation, grow the economy.
Free at the point of use.
On your radio.
Lefty liberal lawyers, the metropolitan elite, the blob.
Midwives and doctors' ability to deliver safe care has been undermined.
If it's not the job of the police to investigate every theft, what is the job?
On Global Player.
Actually, it's Annie.
Is it? Where do we get Marie from?
Doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. These things are important.
This is LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
8:49. Dawn Butler is with us. Just to remind you, if you've just tuned in, her book is called A Purposeful Life, What I've Learned About Breaking Barriers and Inspiring Change. Let's go to Ben in Brighton. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Ben.
Dawn, I would like to say thank you very much. I respect you and everything you've said. I respect hugely your comments in the House. I think they were very brave. And I really appreciate that you did that. So I'd like to ask you this question. Do you believe in democracy, or do you believe in the power that exists? I say this because the Johnson government got 48% of the vote. However, it was only on a 67% turnout. So in truth, the Johnson government, with an 80-seat majority, was elected in by 28% of the electorate. I don't consider that to be a democracy. I was not represented.
Well, that's only because you lost.
So 28% of the vote.
Well, people have a right to decide whether they're going.
Ian,
no, I know, but I'm fair enough. And
thank you. Yeah.
But let me just point out that people have a choice of whether they vote or not, and if they choose not to vote, you can't include them in the stats, can you?
Really? So people who don't do something are not included in statistics? Is that what you're saying here?
Well,
so people who don't have cancer aren't included in statistics of cancer sufferers?
Well, yeah. If they don't have cancer, they're not a cancer sufferer by definition.
I was talking to Dawn.
Okay, go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you.
Wow, I feel like I've been interrupting a little argument there.
Thanks, Dawn.
Well, I think this is a conversation that we need to have, and I think we should be going around and having public meetings talking about how first past the post works and how proportional representation works. I personally have come to the conclusion that I'm more in favour of PR, but it has to be a hybrid system, because some PR systems you don't have a direct connection to your constituents, and I don't think that will be good for politics. I think that MPs need to be accountable to their constituents, and not all of the PR systems will deliver that. And I think it's also really quite interesting that, for instance, London Mayor used to be decided under a PR system, but the government's changed it to a first past the post system because they think that will give them more chance of winning. So there is a bit of a hodgepodge of systems that we have in the UK at the moment.
At the risk of offending Ben by giving my view on this, Ben, I would meet you halfway on this, in that I think there is a case for proportional representation for maybe the House of Lords, if that was elected, or local government. But I think Dawn's absolutely right. For the House of Commons, it's very difficult to find a system of PR that really keeps that constituency link, because the only way that you could do it is if you had a much bigger constituency, say 4 times the size of the current one, and then you'd have people from different parties maybe representing that. But, I mean, Dawn, would you want to be in a constituency where you had sort of 250,000 constituents?
My goodness, I can't cope with constituents at the moment. I think that would be too big. So, I mean, it needs a lot of discussion and tweaking to see if we could make that work. But it's definitely a discussion we have to have, Ben. I agree.
We need to. I mean, because if, roughly speaking, 60% of the electorate are not represented, then is that a democracy?
Yeah, I mean, and also, we do also need to encourage people to vote. People say
you're doing that. You're brilliant. I've really warmed to you. You're really good. Well done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
But Dawn would also say that she represents all of her constituents, no matter whether they voted for her or not.
Absolutely.
Of course, as we all would hope to do. But our representatives should represent us, surely.
Well, they do.
I've never been represented in Parliament in my local elections. Never once in my life. I'm nearly 60. I've never, ever had an MP who I have voted for represent me in Parliament.
But they do represent you.
How representative is that?
They might not agree with everything that you believe, but they're still representing you. Do you see the difference?
Don't get me going in.
Oh, I'll try.
I really don't think so.
We've seen what happens when I get you going, Ben. That way lies madness. Thank you very much. So
Thanks,
we parted as friends. That's the
parted as
secret, I
friends.
think. Sharon is in Hounslow. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, good evening, Ian.
Hi.
Good evening, Dawn. Thanks for taking my call. Dawn, I'd like to ask you this. I have a 16-year-old son. He's a black boy, and he's very, very interested in politics, and he wants to follow a political career. What advice would you give to him to keep him motivated in this current climate to continue along that path and follow in your footsteps?
Is he listening?
He will be in a little while.
What's his name, Sharon? What's his name?
His name's Jaden.
Jaden. Great. Well, I'm really impressed that he's interested in politics. That's amazing and wonderful. My first bit of advice that I would say to him is, basically make sure that he surrounds himself with good people, that he gets involved locally with his local party, that he joins the party. He's old enough to join the party. Get involved, see how the party works, see how the structures work. We'll only change the government and the country if we have different people getting involved in politics. So get him involved in politics. Buy him a copy of my book, A Purposeful Life. Shameless plug. But I actually talk through it in terms of all what I went through. And I'm very kind of honest in it because I wanted people to understand.
Because you weren't interested in politics at 16, were you?
No, it wasn't.
Because you were normal. Jaden, I'm afraid, I'm not going to say he's not normal, but he's not typical, shall we say?
No, he's not typical.
He's not typical, but I think it's brilliant because
regardless
of what he sees and what he agrees with and what he disagrees with, he's still motivated to make a change. And I think as a young black boy in this society, that's really important. But of course,
vital.
We were talking earlier about role models, and there are a few, but having someone give him direct advice would be amazing. So that's why I'm asking.
Oh, wow. Well, it's absolutely vital that, he wants to see change. He's 16. He understands that there's a lot of things that happens in society that affects him, and it affects him differently because he's a young black boy. So there's going to be so many opportunities for him to get involved. I mean, if you lived in Brent, where do you live, Sharon?
We live in the borough of Hounslow.
Hounslow, okay, not too far. But I'm sure if he was to get involved in his local party, that they will just snap him up for all of his energy and enthusiasm.
So you could seal the deal with Jaden right now. You could invite him to the House of Commons, and he'd be a member for life.
It is true. It is true. Send me an email, Sharon.
I will do.
Send me an email.
Definitely, I will do that. We had the privilege of going to the House of Lords recently, but we were not able to go into the House of Commons. So it would be wonderful for him to see it because it was amazing for him. And I just want to encourage him on that journey. Brilliant. And hopefully see him there in a few years.
Oh, wonderful. And he can also, you can ask your local MP to book you an official tour of the House of Commons, and your MP can arrange that. So,
Who's your MP, Sharon?
Oh gosh, she's just gone out of my head. She's a Labour MP.
Is it Seema?
Seema Malhotra.
Yeah, that's
Seema.
Right. Yeah, Seema. Yeah.
Well, she's very good. She would certainly take him around. The thing. If I get emails from parents saying, listening to your programme has really encouraged my son or daughter to get involved or get interested in politics, I can get no bigger compliment than that. And I think it's wonderful when 15, 16, 17-year-olds get interested in politics. Right.
Is he there, Sharon?
He's in bed at the moment. He's just started A-level.
He's in bed at 9 o'clock?
He's just started his A-levels, and it's a long journey because... so he's exhausted, but he's so keen and he's been working so hard, and I just want to encourage him on that journey, because you don't see it very often.
I think you should now rush upstairs, put Global Player on your phone and just replay the last 5 minutes to him.
This is what I'm about to do.
But then he's not going to sleep, is he?
Yeah,
so,
it's true. Jaden, I look forward to seeing you, meeting you.
And Jaden, when I'm in my mid-80s presenting the show, I look forward to interviewing you as Member of Parliament for Hounslow, because, Seema will have given up by then, won't she? Listen, I do apologise to Rosamond because we haven't had time to get to you, but there's everyone else on the board as well, because you've attracted a lot of interest, Dawn. So just one final plug for your book, A Purposeful Life by Dawn Butler MP, published by Torva in hardback at a mere $18.99. Thank you so much for joining us over the last hour. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to turn our attention to a subject which we have talked about once or twice on the programme, school uniforms, because it's been revealed today that around 80% of schools are now paying for school uniforms for poorer pupils. I have a simple solution to this, you might be surprised to hear. Abolish school uniforms. I suggested this to my colleagues in the LBC newsroom and not a single one of them agreed with me. So I might be in for a bit of flack over the next hour, but I think school uniforms have outlived their usefulness. 0345 6060 973. Do you